My name is Annie, and at 35 years old, I finally achieved my greatest dream. After 15 years of saving every penny from my interior design business in Boston, I was able to purchase my dream Victorian home, valued at $850,000. But then came the phone call on a Sunday evening from my parents that changed everything. Their words still ring in my ears. "Annie, we need you to sign over your house to your brother." I felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under me. Before I explain how one phone call turned my life upside down, let me know where you're watching from and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss more incredible stories like this one. Growing up as the youngest of 4, something always felt off. My parents, James and Deborah, seemed to apply different rules to me and my older brother, Tyler. Dad built his small construction company into a regional success, working long hours and demanding nothing less than perfection. Mom stayed home, managing the household with the same precision Dad applied to his business dealings. On the surface, we appeared to be the perfect American family, but beneath that carefully curated image, there was a troubling dynamic I couldn't fully understand until I was much older. From my earliest memories, Tyler received preferential treatment. When he turned 16, Dad surprised him with a brand new car. 2 years later, on my 16th birthday, I received driving lessons and the opportunity to use the family's older car when available. Tyler attended private school, while I went to the local public school because, as Mom explained, your brother needs the structure and connections for his future. When it came time for college applications, my parents paid for Tyler's tuition at an expensive business school without hesitation. Meanwhile, I pieced together scholarships, student loans, and worked 20 hours a week at a coffee shop to afford my education at design school. "Annie, you're so independent and resourceful," Mom would say, as though my self-sufficiency were a personality trait rather than a necessity born out of their neglect. Tyler, now 38, embodied everything my parents valued. He was male, ambitious, and pursued a business career like Dad. The fact that he failed at nearly every venture never seemed to matter. First, there was the failed sports equipment store that closed after just 9 months, with Dad covering the lease. Then came the smartphone app company that never launched a single product, despite consuming $300,000 of our parents' retirement fund. After that, Tyler tried flipping houses, partnered in a bar, and most recently launched a luxury car leasing business. Each venture followed the same pattern: initial excitement, gradual silence, and then late-night calls to our parents begging for money to cover mounting debts. Throughout it all, my parents remained his staunchest supporters and financial backers. "He just needs one good break," Dad would insist at family gatherings. "Tyler thinks big." That's how successful people operate. As we grew older, my relationship with Tyler deteriorated. While we had occasional moments of sibling camaraderie as children, adulthood exposed our fundamental differences. Tyler held my career choice in barely concealed disdain. "Still decorating rich people's living rooms?" he would ask at Thanksgiving dinner, deliberately belittling my work as an award-winning interior designer who had been featured in several national magazines. At Christmas 2 years ago, when I mentioned buying my first condo, Tyler scoffed, "Must be nice to have such simple ambitions." The irony of his statement, coming from someone living in our parents' guest house rent-free, seemed lost on him. While Tyler received endless opportunities and financial bailouts, I built my life from the ground up. After graduating with honors, I worked for 3 established design firms before launching my own business at 28. I lived frugally, saved aggressively, and invested wisely. For 7 years, I lived in a small apartment that also served as my office, working 12-hour days and weekends to build my client base. Every bonus and tax refund went straight into my house fund. When I finally found my dream home last year, it felt like destiny. The Victorian 3-story house, with its original woodwork, bay windows, and charming front porch, needed significant updates but had incredible potential. Built in 1890, it had a character that newer homes simply couldn't match. The previous owners had preserved its historical features while updating the plumbing and electrical systems. Located in a desirable neighborhood near downtown Boston, it offered the perfect spot to eventually relocate my design studio from its rented commercial space to the spacious first floor of the house. I spent 6 months renovating before moving in, doing much of the cosmetic work myself on weekends while contractors handled the structural changes. The kitchen now featured custom cabinets and a marble island where I could spread out design samples. The third floor became my peaceful retreat, with a master bedroom, luxury bathroom, and small sitting room overlooking the maple tree in the backyard. The second floor housed my home office and guest rooms, while the first floor contained formal living spaces and a room I was converting into a client meeting area. This house represented everything I had worked for: financial security, professional advancement, and a space that reflected my personal aesthetic. Every corner held significance, because I had sacrificed so much to make it mine. That's why the phone call that Sunday evening felt like someone had thrown ice water directly into my face. The day began like any other. I spent the morning finalizing design boards for a new client, then treated myself to brunch at my favorite neighborhood cafe. After running errands, I returned home to enjoy the spring weather on my front porch with a glass of lemonade and a new interior design magazine. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow across my living room's hardwood floors, my phone rang. Seeing my parents' number, I answered without any inkling of what was to come. "Annie, how are you, sweetheart?" Mom's voice had that overly sweet quality I recognized from childhood, the tone she used when preparing to ask for something significant. Dad was also on the line, his gruff hello indicating that this was a serious family discussion. After a brief exchange about the weather and Dad's recent doctor's appointment, Mom cleared her throat. "Annie, we need to discuss something important about your brother." My body tensed instinctively. Conversations that began this way typically ended with me feeling pressured, guilty, or both. Still, nothing could have prepared me for what came next. "Tyler's going through a difficult time," Dad said, his businessman voice in full effect. His divorce from Jessica was finalized last month, and she took him to the cleaners. The house, the cars, nearly all their liquid assets. This was news to me. I knew their marriage had been troubled, but Tyler hadn't mentioned a divorce during our brief interaction at Easter dinner 3 weeks earlier. Mom jumped in, her voice trembling slightly. "He's practically homeless, Annie. Staying in a hotel right now because Jessica won't let him near the house. He needs a fresh start, a chance to rebuild his life." "I'm sorry to hear that," I responded cautiously. "That sounds really tough." While I felt genuine sympathy for my brother's situation, experience had taught me to proceed carefully when my parents discussed Tyler's problems. "We've been thinking," Dad continued, "and we've come up with a solution that will help everyone." The pause that followed seemed to stretch forever before. Mom said the words that would upend my life. "We need you to sign over your house to Tyler." I nearly dropped my phone. "Excuse me?" "Your brother needs a proper home," Dad explained, as though discussing a simple favor, rather than the transfer of a nearly $1 million property. "You're young, single, and can easily start over. Tyler has a reputation to maintain, business contacts to impress. He can't be seen living in some cramped apartment." My mind raced, certain I had misunderstood. "You want me to give Tyler my house? The house I spent 15 years saving for and 6 months renovating?" "Not give," Mom corrected. "More like a swap. You can take Tyler's apartment. It's small but perfect for a single woman, and when you eventually get married, your husband will probably want to buy a different house anyway." The casual sexism stung almost as much as the outrageous request. I struggled to form a coherent response. "This isn't up for discussion," Dad added when my silence stretched too long. As the only son, Tyler is responsible for carrying on the family legacy. He needs a proper base to rebuild his life and businesses. You've always been the responsible one, Annie. We're counting on you to help your brother when he needs it most. Finding my voice, I responded firmly. I bought this house with my own money. I worked incredibly hard for it. There's absolutely no way I'm giving it to Tyler or anyone else. Mom's tone immediately shifted from sweet to injured. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By refusing to help your own brother? What have you done for me?" The words escaped before I could stop them. "I put myself through college. I built my business without any help. I saved for this house entirely on my own. We raised you," Dad shouted, his patience evaporating. "We gave you a roof over your head and food on the table. And now, when your family needs you, you turn your back on us. This isn't about helping family," I countered, my voice shaking. "This is about taking something that belongs to me and giving it to Tyler, just like you've always given him everything at my expense." Mom began crying, loud, dramatic sobs designed to make me feel guilty. "I always knew you resented your brother, but I never thought you'd be this selfish. You've always been the difficult child, Annie, always thinking only of yourself." Dad's voice turned cold. "Let me make this clear. We expect you to sign the papers transferring ownership to Tyler within 30 days. We've already spoken to our family attorney about drawing up the documents. And if I refuse?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Then we'll sue you," he stated flatly. "We've supported you your entire life, and we have documentation of loans and gifts that were meant to be repaid. You wouldn't want this to get ugly, Annie." My hands shook with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "There were no loans. You never gave me money for this house or my business. You're making that up." "We'll see what the court says," Dad replied ominously. "Think carefully about your next steps. Family should come first, and right now Tyler needs this more than you do." I hung up without another word, my entire body trembling. Sitting in my beautiful living room that I had painted myself, surrounded by furniture I had carefully selected and restored, I struggled to process what had just happened. My own parents were threatening to sue me if I didn't surrender my home to my irresponsible brother. The sheer audacity left me breathless. That night, I barely slept. Each creak of the old house, once comforting, now reminded me that my sanctuary was under threat from the very people who should have been proudest of my achievement. The morning after the phone call, I woke up hoping it had been a bizarre nightmare. The string of text messages on my phone quickly dispelled that illusion. Mom had sent 5 separate paragraphs about family obligation and how disappointed she was in my selfishness. Dad's message was shorter but more threatening. "Your mother is heartbroken. Call us when you're ready to discuss the house transfer like an adult." I went through my Monday client meetings in a daze, struggling to focus on fabric samples and furniture arrangements while my personal life imploded. By mid-afternoon, Tyler had joined the campaign. His text almost made me laugh, despite everything. "Hey sis, heard Mom and Dad talk to you about the house situation. Just wanted to say I'd take good care of the place. Let's make this easy on everyone, as if I would simply hand over my $850,000 home because he promised to take good care of it." I didn't bother responding. Tuesday brought escalation. 10 missed calls from my parents while I was in meetings. A voicemail from Tyler that made my blood boil. "Annie, you're being ridiculous about this. It's just a house. You can buy another one. I'm the one who needs to maintain appearances for business connections. What do you need all that space for anyway? You're just a single woman with a little decorating business. Be reasonable." His dismissive attitude toward both my gender and my career revealed exactly what he thought of me. The patronizing tone made it clear he believed he deserved my house simply because he was male, and considered his undefined business ventures more important than my established design firm. By Wednesday, my parents had enlisted reinforcements. My mother's sister called to check in and subtly suggested I should help poor Tyler out. 2 family friends texted asking why I was being so difficult about sharing with my brother. Apparently, my parents were telling everyone who would listen about my selfishness, carefully framing the narrative to make me the villain. The only ally emerged unexpectedly. My father's sister, Aunt Patricia, called Wednesday evening after I turned my phone to silent to escape the barrage. "Annie, it's Aunt Patty. Don't tell your parents I called. I heard what they're asking you to do, and it's absolutely insane." Her blunt assessment brought tears to my eyes. After days of gaslighting, hearing someone validate my perspective felt like taking a full breath after nearly drowning. "They're saying I'm selfish and ungrateful," I confided. "That's nonsense," she scoffed. "You worked your tail off for that house. Nobody handed you anything. Listen carefully, honey. There's something strange going on with your parents' finances. Your dad's been asking your uncle for loans, which isn't like him. I think this whole scheme is about more than just giving Tyler a place to live." "What should I do?" I asked, feeling like a lost child despite being 35. "Get a lawyer," she advised firmly. "Not just any lawyer, but a shark. Someone who specializes in real estate and family disputes. Don't sign anything. Don't make promises. Document everything they say to you. This smells fishy and you need protection." After we hung up, I researched attorneys, eventually finding a highly recommended real estate lawyer named Sophia Goldstein, who had experience with family property disputes. Thursday morning brought the most aggressive attack yet. My mother called my business line, knowing I would answer for clients. "Your father is preparing the lawsuit. she announced without preamble. "He's gathering evidence of all the financial support we've provided over the years. We have receipts for your high school tuition, the down payment on your first apartment, even the loan for starting your business." My head spun at these complete fabrications. "Mom, that never happened. I attended public school. I saved for my apartment deposit myself, and I started my business with a small bank loan that I've since repaid." "We'll see what the judge believes," she replied cryptically. "By the way, Tyler mentioned he might stop by your house today to look around. He needs to take measurements for his furniture." The casual way she announced this trespassing plan stunned me. Absolutely not. He doesn't have permission to enter my home. "It's going to be his home soon enough," she said dismissively. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Annie." I immediately called my office manager to explain I needed to work from home today, concerned Tyler might actually try to enter my house. Just before noon, my security camera alerted me to movement on the front porch. Through the app, I watched in disbelief as Tyler, accompanied by my parents and a fourth person I didn't recognize, approached my front door. I opened it before they could ring the bell. "You need to leave, all of you." Dad gestured to the stranger, a thin man with slicked back hair and an ill-fitting suit. "This is Martin Wells, our family attorney. We've brought the paperwork for the property transfer. Let's handle this civilly." "There's nothing civil about trying to steal my house," I replied, blocking the doorway. "I'm not signing anything. Please leave before I call the police." Tyler tried to push past me. "Come on, sis." "Don't be dramatic. I just want to see the place." I stood my ground. "This is breaking and entering, Tyler. Step back now." The supposed attorney cleared his throat. "Miss Harrison, your parents have substantial documentation showing their financial contributions to this property. Fighting this in court will be costly and embarrassing for you. Signing today is your best option." Something about his demeanor seemed off. He didn't carry himself like any lawyer I'd met, and he kept glancing at Tyler for approval. "I've consulted my own attorney," I bluffed, "and she disagrees completely. Now please leave my property immediately." After a tense standoff, they finally retreated, but not before Mom called me a heartless daughter, and Dad promised I would regret my decision. I watched through the window as they conferred on the sidewalk, clearly plotting their next move. That evening, I received an email from Wells Legal Associates that made my stomach drop. It contained a formal notice of intent to sue, citing breach of verbal contract and unjust enrichment regarding my house. The email demanded I surrender the property to Tyler immediately or face legal action, seeking the house, plus financial damages. Alone in my threatened home, I finally broke down. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to sob uncontrollably, terrified that despite the obvious injustice, I might somehow lose everything I had worked for. First thing Friday morning, I called Sophia Goldstein's office and was relieved when her assistant offered me an emergency consultation that afternoon. The intervening hours felt endless. I gathered every document related to my house purchase, business formation and education expenses, determined to prove I had financed everything myself. Sophia's office occupied the top floor of a restored brownstone in downtown Boston. The reception area featured tasteful artwork and comfortable seating that immediately put me at ease. When Sophia herself emerged to greet me, her confident handshake and direct gaze further calmed my nerves. At 40-something, with sleek dark hair and a tailored navy suit, she projected exactly the competence and authority I needed. Her office views overlooked the city, a testament to her success, and I hoped her ability to help me. "So, Miss Harrison," she began once we were seated, "explain what brings you here today." For the next 20 minutes, I detailed the entire situation, from Sunday's phone call to yesterday's confrontation on my doorstep. Sophia listened intently, occasionally making notes but mostly maintaining eye contact. When I showed her the threatening email, something unexpected happened. She laughed. Not a small chuckle, but a genuine laugh that momentarily transformed her professional demeanor. "I'm sorry," she said, noticing my confusion. "I'm not laughing at your situation, which is genuinely distressing. I'm laughing at this absolutely amateur attempt at legal intimidation." She turned her computer monitor toward me. "First, Wells Legal Associates doesn't exist in Massachusetts. Second, this email address is a Gmail account, not a professional legal domain. Third, The language in this notice contains multiple grammatical errors and misuses several legal terms. This wasn't written by an attorney. It's completely fraudulent. Relief washed over me, followed quickly by outrage. So that man who came to my house wasn't even a real lawyer? Sophia's expression turned serious. Let me make a quick call. She dialed a number and put it on speaker. Massachusetts Bar Association, how can I help you? Hi, this is Sophia Goldstein. Could you please check if there's a Martin Wells registered to practice law in the state? After a brief hold, the answer came back. No, Martin Wells is not licensed to practice in Massachusetts. After hanging up, Sophia's eyes narrowed. Impersonating an attorney is a crime. Now let me explain where you actually stand legally, which is on completely solid ground. She outlined the basic principles clearly. No one can force you to transfer your property against your will. Period. Not your parents, not your brother, not anyone. As the sole owner with clear title, only you have the authority to sell or transfer ownership. But what about their threats to sue over supposed financial contributions? I asked. Without documentation, those claims go nowhere. Even if they did contribute money, which you say they didn't, gifts don't create entitlement to your property unless there was a formal written agreement saying so. And from what you've told me, there was never any expectation of repayment or equity in your home. She continued, What concerns me more is the pattern of harassment and this fraudulent legal threat. Using a fake attorney to intimidate you could actually give you grounds to take legal action against them. The realization that I held the power in this situation, after days of feeling victimized, was staggering. So what should I do now? First, we document everything. Every call, text, email, and that confrontation at your house. Next, I'll draft a cease and desist letter addressing their harassment and the fraudulent legal representation. That usually scares off most people. She paused, studying me. Is there anything else about your family situation I should know? Any reason they might be particularly desperate for your property specifically? I hesitated, then shared what Aunt Patricia had mentioned about my father asking for loans. My parents have always financially supported Tyler's failed businesses. The latest was a luxury car leasing company that closed 6 months ago. I don't know details, but he apparently lost a significant amount of investor money. Sophia typed some notes. And your brother's divorce. Do you know if there were financial implications beyond what your parents mentioned? Tyler and Jessica married 4 years ago. She comes from a wealthy family, and I believe she invested in his business ventures. The divorce might involve repayment. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. One last question. Has your brother ever lived in your house or contributed to its purchase or maintenance in any way? Never. He hadn't even seen inside until he tried to force his way in yesterday. Perfect. Then there's absolutely no basis for any claim. She leaned forward. Annie, I want you to understand something clearly. You are in a position of complete legal power here. Their threats are empty. What they're attempting could constitute harassment, fraud, and potentially even extortion. You don't need to fear them. Her words released something in me. A tension I'd been carrying since childhood. The notion that my parents' authority had limits. That their lifelong favoritism of Tyler couldn't extend to taking my hard-earned property. Felt revolutionary. What I'd like to suggest, Sophia continued, is setting up a meeting with all parties present. Sometimes having a professional clearly explain the legal reality stops this kind of family pressure campaign immediately. Would you be comfortable with that? The thought of confronting my family with professional backup was both terrifying and appealing. Yes, I think that's necessary. Excellent. Let's schedule it at your house. Home field advantage matters in these situations, and it reinforces that the property is unquestionably yours. As we finalized our strategy, Sophia made one more call to a colleague who specialized in fraud cases, putting him on speaker. Daniel, quick question. I have a client whose brother and parents brought someone impersonating an attorney to her home to pressure her into signing over her property, then sent fraudulent legal notices. Besides cease and desist, what would you recommend? Daniel's response was immediate. Document everything. Security cameras, saved emails, text messages. If they continue after receiving the cease and desist, we could potentially pursue criminal charges for the attorney impersonation and civil action for harassment and attempted fraud. The courts take false representation of legal credentials very seriously. After ending the call, Sophia turned back to me. I don't think it will come to that. Most people back down immediately when confronted with the potential consequences of their actions by a real attorney. But it's good to understand all our options. For the first time in days, I felt hope replacing my fear. Walking out of Sophia's office with our plan in place, I stood taller. No longer the family doormat, but a woman prepared to defend what was rightfully hers. Sunday afternoon arrived with perfect spring weather, sunshine streaming through my bay, windows and highlighting the careful restoration work I'd completed on the original woodwork. The irony wasn't lost on me that exactly 1 week after the phone call that started this nightmare, my family would be returning to my home under very different circumstances. Sophia arrived 30 minutes early to review our strategy. She looked even more imposing today in a charcoal suit with subtle red accents that somehow conveyed both authority and warning. "Remember," she advised as we heard cars pulling up outside, "stay calm regardless of what they say. Let me do most of the talking. But when you do speak, be firm and direct. This is your home, and you're in control of this meeting." The doorbell rang precisely at 3:01. I opened the door to find my parents and Tyler standing on my porch, their expressions ranging from Dad's barely contained anger to Mom's theatrical distress to Tyler's inexplicable smugness. "Please come in," I said, formally leading them to the living room where Sophia stood waiting. Dad immediately bristled. "Who's this?" We agreed to a family discussion. "This is Sophia Goldstein, my attorney," I replied calmly. "Given the legal threats you've made, I thought it appropriate to have legal representation present." Mom's eyes widened. "An attorney, Annie, that's completely unnecessary for a family matter." "I disagree," Sophia interjected smoothly, "especially considering you brought someone falsely claiming to be an attorney to Miss Harrison's home on Thursday, followed by fraudulent legal notices." "That's ridiculous," Dad blustered, though I noticed he avoided meeting Sophia's direct gaze. "Martin is an old family friend who happens to have legal experience. Martin Wells is not licensed to practice law in Massachusetts," Sophia stated flatly. "Impersonating an attorney is a criminal offense, but we can set that aside for the moment and focus on the matter at hand." She gestured for everyone to sit. My parents and Tyler reluctantly took seats on the sofa while I sat in an armchair across from them, Sophia standing supportively beside me. "Let me clarify the legal reality of this situation," Sophia began. "Annie is the sole legal owner of this property, purchased entirely with her own funds. She has complete documentation of the purchase, mortgage approval based solely on her income and credit, and all renovation expenses paid from her accounts. There is no legal mechanism by which you can force her to transfer this property to anyone." Dad leaned forward. "We've supported Annie her entire life. We have records of financial assistance that—" "No, you don't," I interrupted firmly. "Because it doesn't exist. You never helped me buy this house. You never helped me start my business. You never even helped me with college tuition." Mom turned to Tyler surprisingly. "Tell her, Tyler. Tell her why this is so important." An uncomfortable silence fell as Tyler shifted in his seat. When he finally spoke, his voice had a desperate edge I'd never heard before. "Look, Annie, I need this house. Jessica took everything in the divorce. Everything. And there are people expecting repayment that I can't provide." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "What kind of people, Mr. Harrison?" Tyler glanced nervously at our parents. "Investors? Business associates? People who won't take excuses much longer." "Tyler made some unfortunate investment decisions," Dad interjected. "But with the right base of operations, he can rebuild. This house would provide that foundation." Something in Tyler snapped. "Stop with the business, Dad. You know damn well what's really going on." The sudden outburst silenced the room. Tyler stood pacing angrily. "I owe $300,000 to people who don't send collection notices, okay? They send guys to break kneecaps. The casino was willing to work with me until Jessica's father called in some favor and got them to demand full repayment immediately." My mother gasped. "Tyler, you told us that money was for supplier debts from the car business." "The car business failed a year ago," he shouted. "I've been gambling to try to make it back, and now I'm in deeper than ever." He turned to me, desperation in his eyes. "The house is my only way out. I can sell it, pay off my debts, and have enough left to start over somewhere else." The truth finally emerged. This wasn't about Tyler needing a place to live or maintain appearances. This was about selling my house to cover his gambling debts. Sophia's expression remained professional, but I could see the confirmation of her suspicions in her eyes. So, the actual plan was never for Tyler to live here, she said calmly. It was to sell Miss Harrison's property to cover gambling debts. It doesn't matter why he needs it, Dad insisted, though his face had paled considerably during Tyler's outburst. Family helps family. Your brother is in trouble, Annie, and you have the means to help him. By sacrificing everything I've worked for? I asked incredulously. Would you have ever asked Tyler to give up his home for me? The silence that followed provided my answer. This meeting is over, Sophia stated firmly. My client will not be transferring her property under any circumstances. Additionally, any further attempts to pressure her, including false legal threats or uninvited visits to her home or business, will result in legal action against all of you. Dad's face reddened. You ungrateful little... He stopped himself, then continued in an icy tone. If this is your choice, then you're no longer part of this family. I'm removing you from our will. Don't expect anything from us ever again. The threat that might once have devastated me now felt almost liberating. I've never expected anything from you. That's how I built this life you're trying to take from me. Mom began crying dramatically. How can you do this to your brother, to your family, after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly. You favored Tyler my entire life. You've dismissed my accomplishments while celebrating his failures. You've never supported me the way you've supported him. And now you want to take the one thing I'm most proud of achieving on my own and give it to him to sell for gambling debts. Tyler surprisingly had gone quiet, staring at the floor. I think we're done here, I said, standing. I'll ask you all to leave now. Dad stood, pointing a finger at me. This isn't over, Annie. You've made an enemy today. Sophia stepped forward. That sounded remarkably like a threat, Mr. Harrison. Would you like to clarify your statement for the record? Dad faltered under her steady gaze, then turned and stormed toward the door. Mom followed, still sobbing theatrically. Tyler lingered behind. Annie, please, he said quietly. I'm desperate here. So am I replied. Desperate to be valued by my own family. Desperate to have my hard work respected. Desperate to stop being the solution to your problems. Find another way, Tyler. My house is not for sale. After they left, I stood in my living room, shaking but upright. The confrontation I'd dreaded for days was over, and I had stood my ground. Sophia placed a hand on my shoulder. You did extraordinarily well. They have no legal recourse, and now they know it. What happens next? I asked. They'll probably try emotional manipulation a few more times. When that fails, they'll either accept reality or escalate in ways that will only strengthen our position legally. Either way, your home is secure. As Sophia packed up her briefcase, I gazed around at the space I had created. Each detail reflected my vision and hard work. For the first time since this ordeal began, I truly believed it would remain mine. The days following the confrontation brought the predicted emotional escalation. Mom called daily, alternating between tearful pleas and guilt trips. Tyler might have to declare bankruptcy, she wailed in one voicemail. His credit will be ruined forever, and it's all because you wouldn't help your own brother. I didn't respond, following Sophia's advice to maintain distance until things settled. Dad took a different approach, enlisting extended family members to pressure me. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly texted their disappointment in my family disloyalty. My uncle called to reason with me man to man, as though my gender somehow made me less capable of making financial decisions. Sophia sent the promised cease and desist letter by certified mail, formally documenting the harassment, fraud, and impersonation of legal counsel. She included a clear statement that any further contact regarding the property would be considered harassment and result in legal action. The letter seemed to enrage rather than deter Tyler. 2 weeks after our confrontation, he appeared at my design studio during business hours, clearly intoxicated and belligerent. You think you're so much better than everyone? He shouted as my receptionist called security. Little Annie with her fancy house and her fancy business. You've always been Dad's secret favorite. That's why you're doing this. The irony of his accusation might have been laughable if the situation weren't so distressing. Security escorted him out, but not before he knocked over a display of fabric samples and threatened to make me sorry. 3 clients witnessed the outburst, potentially damaging my business reputation. That incident crossed a line for Sophia. "We need a restraining order," she advised. "He's escalating from harassment to potential violence and targeting your livelihood." The judge granted a temporary order prohibiting Tyler from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or my business. When my parents learned about the restraining order, they seemed to finally understand the seriousness of the situation. The daily calls stopped abruptly. Throughout this period, family members chose sides. My mother's relatives largely supported my parents' position, viewing the situation through the traditional lens that children owed unlimited support to family, regardless of circumstances. My father's side proved more divided, with Aunt Patricia and 2 cousins reaching out privately to offer support. Aunt Patricia invited me to lunch at a quiet restaurant far from my parents' usual haunts. Over salads, she filled in gaps in my understanding of our family dynamics. "Your grandfather was extremely traditional," she explained. "He believed only sons should inherit family wealth or run the family business. When your father and I were growing up, it was made clear that everything would go to him, despite me showing more aptitude for business. Your father internalized those values completely." She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "When you were born, I saw the same pattern beginning. From day one, Tyler was the heir and you were secondary. I tried to talk to your father about it, but he couldn't see what he was doing." Her words helped me understand that my parents' behavior wasn't entirely personal. They were replicating patterns established generations earlier. It didn't excuse their actions, but it helped me process my hurt with more compassion. "What should I do now?" I asked. "Live your life brilliantly," she advised. "Create boundaries that protect you, but keep a door slightly open for reconciliation if they ever truly recognize what they've done. Some people never change, but sometimes a major shock can trigger reevaluation." That shock came sooner than expected. Through family connections, I learned that Tyler had borrowed $75,000 from my parents after our confrontation, promising it would resolve his gambling debts. Instead, he disappeared with the money, leaving only a text message saying he needed time away to figure things out. The betrayal devastated my parents, who had liquidated a significant portion of their retirement accounts to provide the funds. With Tyler gone and the money vanished, they could no longer maintain their lifestyle. Their large suburban home, already heavily mortgaged to finance Tyler's previous ventures, went on the market. I watched from a distance, informed through Aunt Patricia's occasional updates. My parents downsized to a 2-bedroom condo, selling many of their possessions to cover expenses. Dad, who had always defined himself through material success, seemed particularly broken by this reversal of fortune. The stress took a physical toll as well. 4 months after Tyler disappeared, Dad suffered a minor stroke. Though he recovered without permanent disability, the health scare forced him to reduce his work hours, further straining their finances. I struggled with conflicting emotions during this time. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing natural consequences unfold for their lifetime of enabling Tyler while dismissing me. Another part ached, knowing they were suffering regardless of how they had treated me. I sent flowers to the hospital but maintained my distance, still protecting myself from potential manipulation. Meanwhile, I found unexpected support among friends and colleagues. My receptionist, Jennifer, who had witnessed Tyler's outburst, invited me to her family's weekly dinner gatherings. My neighbor, David, checked in regularly, sometimes bringing homemade bread or simply offering conversation on my front porch. My design team rallied around me, covering client meetings when I needed mental health days. These connections formed a chosen family that provided the unconditional support my biological family never had. Through their kindness, I began healing not just from the recent trauma, but from a lifetime of feeling secondary and unvalued. 6 months after the confrontation, I received word through Aunt Patricia that Tyler had surfaced in Las Vegas, working as a car salesman and still gambling. He made no effort to contact our parents or repay the money he had taken. This final abandonment seemed to break something fundamental in my parents' worldview. For the first time, they had to confront the reality that their son, in whom they had invested everything, had exploited their devotion without remorse. Nearly a year after that fateful Sunday phone call, I received an unexpected letter in my mailbox. No email, no text, just an actual handwritten letter on creamy stationery. I recognized my mother's elegant penmanship immediately and almost discarded it unopened. Something stopped me. Perhaps curiosity, perhaps hope, or simply a desire for closure. The letter began without preamble. Dear Annie, I don't expect forgiveness, but I owe you the dignity of an apology. What we asked of you was wrong. What we've done throughout your life was wrong. I see that now with painful clarity. She continued for 3 pages, acknowledging specific instances of favoritism, dismissal of my accomplishments, and unfair expectations. She detailed how Tyler's disappearance had forced her and Dad to reevaluate everything. They believed about family obligation in parenthood, raised one child to feel entitled to everything, and another to expect nothing. In doing so, we created exactly the outcomes we now face. Your strength and independence weren't despite our parenting, but because of our neglect. Tyler's dependence and selfishness were cultivated by our constant intervention. The letter concluded with a request, not for money or assistance, but simply for the possibility of rebuilding some form of relationship. We don't deserve your time or attention, but if you're ever willing to meet, we would very much like to know the daughter we failed to truly see for 35 years. I shared the letter with Sophia during our monthly lunch, a friendship that had developed from our professional relationship. It seems genuine, she observed. The question is whether you want any contact with them moving forward. You're under no obligation, legal or moral. After careful consideration, I agreed to meet my parents at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. Sophia offered to accompany me, but I decided to go alone, though I scheduled a call with her immediately after as emotional support. My parents had aged considerably in the years since I'd seen them. Dad's stroke had left him with a slight limp and less confident posture. Mom's hair had turned completely gray, the expensive highlights abandoned with their reduced circumstances. They rose awkwardly when I approached their table, clearly unsure whether to attempt a hug or handshake. I resolved the moment by sitting directly, maintaining the emotional distance I still needed. Thank you for coming, Mom began, her voice smaller than I remembered. We weren't sure you would. I almost didn't, I admitted, but I believe in hearing people out when they say they've changed. Dad cleared his throat, emotion making his voice rough. Annie, I've spent my entire life believing I knew what mattered. Success, appearance, continuing the family name. I was wrong about all of it. He gestured between himself and my mother. We followed traditions without questioning them. Boys were heirs. Girls were accessories. Business mattered more than happiness. Appearances counted more than character. It took losing almost everything to see how hollow those values were. We never saw you, Mom added. Not really. Your independence wasn't inconvenient. It was remarkable. Your success wasn't despite being female. It was because you're extraordinary. We were so busy trying to fix Tyler that we missed celebrating you. Their words sounded rehearsed but sincere, as though they had practiced articulating revelations that remained painful and new. I appreciated the effort even as I maintained emotional guards. What are you hoping for from this meeting? I asked directly. They exchanged glances before Dad answered. Honestly, we don't know. A beginning, maybe. A chance to know you as you actually are, not as we assumed you should be. Tyler called last month, Mom added, asking for money again. For the first time, we said no. He hung up immediately. That small act of boundary setting represented significant growth for them, though it had come decades too late. We talked for nearly 2 hours, the conversation gradually becoming less stilted. I shared details about my business expansion and a historical home renovation project I had recently been featured in a design magazine. They listened with what appeared to be genuine interest. As we prepared to leave, Dad asked hesitantly, "Would you consider meeting again sometime? Perhaps dinner next month?" I considered the question carefully. I'm open to building a new relationship slowly, but I need to be clear. I'll never again allow anyone to devalue me or my achievements or to make claims on what I've earned. If we move forward, it has to be with complete respect for my boundaries. We understand, Mom said quietly, and we will earn your trust, however long it takes. Over the following months, we established a cautious new connection. Not the unconditional parent-child relationship they once assumed was their right, but a more balanced adult relationship with clearly defined boundaries. They never entered my home without explicit invitation. They asked about my work with authentic interest. They sent birthday and holiday cards with heartfelt messages rather than gift cards to home improvement stores with hints about updating my decor. Tyler eventually returned to the area but maintained his distance from all of us. Occasional reports filtered through mutual connections. Another failed business venture. A brief engagement broken off abruptly. Continuing financial troubles. I felt pity rather than resentment, recognizing how our parents' well-intentioned but misguided favoritism had ultimately handicapped rather than helped him. My design business flourished in the aftermath of the conflict. The clarity and confidence I gained from defending what was mine translated into more assertive business practices and higher-profile clients. I expanded my studio into the entire first floor of my home, as originally planned, hiring 2 additional designers to handle the increased workload. Sophia and I remained close friends and occasional collaborators. She referred clients needing design services, while I recommended her to anyone requiring legal assistance. We jointly created a workshop series for women on protecting assets and establishing financial independence, sharing my story anonymously as a cautionary tale about family financial pressure. Through that workshop, I connected with dozens of women experiencing similar situations. Some faced parents demanding houses or savings to bail out siblings. Others dealt with ex-spouses attempting to reclaim property after divorce. Many simply needed reassurance that maintaining financial boundaries with family was not selfish, but healthy. Standing in my home office one evening, watching the sunset light filter through the bay windows I had so carefully restored, I reflected on how differently things might have turned out had I given in to pressure and guilt. Instead of this beautiful space that represented my success and served as the foundation of my thriving business, I would have nothing, while Tyler would likely have squandered the property's value within months. The greatest gift from this painful experience was the profound understanding that love does not require self-sacrifice. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for authentic relationships. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say no. My house keys hang on a custom holder near my front door, a gift from Aunt Patricia. Engraved on the wooden plaque is a quote that summarizes everything I learned through this journey. The most important doors we guard are not to our homes, but to our boundaries. Who we allow through either threshold determines the quality of our lives. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure? What boundaries have you created to protect what matters most to you? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of standing up for yourself, and share with anyone who might need encouragement to protect their own boundaries. Remember, you deserve to enjoy the fruits of your labor, and sometimes the strongest form of love is saying no to unreasonable demands. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to defend what's rightfully yours.